Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It's me, the South African Wanderer, and today I'm coming to you from my mom's garden because I wanted to quickly run through a video of backyard birding and almost how you get into birding and how you identify some of the birds that are in your backyard. I've got my brother's dog Lara with me. We're babysitting, and Lara wants to be in the video, so she's going to be popping in and out of the video as she explores the garden while I'm here. And I'm actually sitting behind my setup for the bird feeder that I have here in my garden. So I've put together just a few tile slates and built it up to the level of this wall in the garden, and I've got a little perch there if I want to do some shots of the birds on the perches. And every morning we put out about 500 grams of bird seed on this platform, and we get quite a few birds coming through. So we buy about 3 10-kilo bags of seed almost every 2 months. So we're working through a 10 kg bag of seed every 20 days almost. And with my mom away, I had to put out the seeds. So I decided to capture some footage of the birds that do come through, and then give you a quick guide on what you should be looking for when you're trying to identify what the birds are. In your garden, just like in my garden, you'll probably get a few common species. I'm in Johannesburg, so my species may differ, for instance, from the birds in Durban or Cape Town. But this is not going to be a comprehensive guide, let's say. It's more a guide on how you can get started just by putting out seed in your backyard, and letting the birds that are in the area come through and enjoy them, and then try to start identifying the birds that you are seeing. So I think without much further ado, let's jump into the footage I did get, and I'll take you through some of the shots and some of the bird species. I think I'm going to call this video "Why Every Sparrow is Not a Sparrow," and hopefully by watching this footage and the accompanying commentary, you'll understand why every sparrow is not a sparrow. Okay guys, before we jump in, I just want to show you, this is the 5th edition of the Sasol Birds of Southern Africa that I have as my reference book. I started off with the 4th edition and then was gifted this copy by Jay, which I'm thankful for, because it does have some corrections, and some of the issues have been cleaned up, so it makes for a better reference guide. Jumping into the identification, I think there's 2 ways to use this book as a reference almost. So there's the quick reference guide here, where you can see different birds and things like that. And if you know sort of the family of birds that you can that you're looking for, you can jump to it almost immediately. And then at the back of the book, there's a index with all the bird names just to look up. So if you know the name of the bird that you looking at and want to just confirm identification, this index is quite good, because then it will just direct you to the page that you're looking for. So the first set of birds we have coming through, I think most people will be able to identify sort of the family that they belong to. So if you look at them, you'll see that these are doves or pigeons. So I think we'll start off with the doves. So we find D, and then it's page 248. Okay, so pigeons and doves are set in the same sort of family group, and then you have to look for which sort of pigeon or dove we have that comes through. So you can see almost from the first page, it's none of these doves, but now the second page starts looking quite interesting, and the species we actually looking at that comes through is the laughing dove. So that's the bird that's in its large numbers. This one here, not this one here. So the laughing dove is the first dove that we can identify. You can see from the pinkish color, the color on the wings, it's a necklace that the book describes it, black flecked necklace. So you can see that, and then one of the other things to do is just confirm the distribution. So you can see the laughing dove distribution is all through South Africa. So they're quite common, and yeah, you'll see them. Then, if we look in between the laughing doves, there's one that doesn't actually fit the description, because it's got this black border or black collar to its neck, and that's the Cape turtle dove. So again, we look at the distribution, and you can see that the Cape turtle dove is all through the country and is also quite common. Now, if we, for instance, saw a different color eye, or on this one a red eye, you can see how almost the base Cape turtle dove can then be easily confused, for instance, with the African mourning dove or the red-eye dove. And then if you look at the distribution, for instance, on the African mourning dove, this will not be found near Johannesburg, because you can see the distribution is north of Johannesburg and into Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. So African mourning dove rules itself out almost, but it could actually then be the red-eye dove. But then you obviously look at the red eye and the coloration, and you eliminate the red-eye dove. So the one different dove in between all the laughing doves is the Cape turtle dove. In the bush, I get confused with these quite a lot, because as you can see, they're quite similar. Then we had some, sparrows visit, male sparrows to start off with. So we quickly look at the sparrow, page 440. So we get to the sparrow pages, and as you can see, there's one page of sparrows, and then you get into weavers. But as you can see, there are 6 different sparrows that we get in South Africa. Now, you may be thinking that, you've seen sparrows before, everyone knows what a sparrow is, but do you really know what a sparrow is? Because we've got 6 different species that you can find in South Africa. One quite rarely and almost eliminates itself, being the northern grey-headed sparrow, because its distribution is very small in South Africa. I think just on the Chobe, if I'm not mistaken, in Botswana. But the rest are distributed within South Africa, and you can see them quite clearly in South Africa. So taking a closer look at the sparrows, so the northern grey-headed sparrow is eliminated. Then, the sparrow we're looking at has black on its head. So you eliminate the southern grey-headed sparrow, you eliminate the yellow-throated bush sparrow, formerly known as the yellow-throated Petronia. So that has a very distinct yellow on its chest. So those three are eliminated, and you move towards the top of the page. So the great sparrow, you can see here, has a little bit of black on it. Our sparrow that we're looking at has quite a lot more black in it. That eliminates itself. Oh, I think one thing to actually check now that we have distinct sexual dimorphism between the birds, the male and the female look different. So the symbol for males is there, and the symbol for female is there, just to get yourself orientated on the book. So the great sparrow eliminates itself as well. So then you need to look closely and see whether it's a Cape sparrow or a house sparrow. When you have two birds that are close like this, one thing to do is quickly check the distribution. Maybe one of them is not found where you are. But as you can see, both these sparrows are both found in and around Joburg, because the distribution is throughout South Africa. So they don't eliminate each other. But if we look at the male Cape sparrow, you'll see that he's got a black head. He's got some white, in between, whereas the house sparrow has a gray head. So, you can then distinguish between the two sparrows like that. The one we have in the shot is therefore the Cape sparrow and not the house sparrow. And then we also got a female that visited, and you can see the female coloring on the house sparrow is a little bit different. The female on the Cape sparrow has this white on its brow. Sorry, not on its brow, the supercilium, that's what it's called. And it has a plain reddish back. Rufus in the book means reddish. And then the female house sparrow has I think one of the interesting interactions we got was the male feeding another bird, which looks like a female, but it's a juvenile, because if you look closely around the beak, you'll see a little bit of yellow color showing as well. So that was a good interaction to see. Okay, so then next we got some weavers, and weavers are close to sparrows, same size, same beak structure and things like that. But we had a yellow weaver, and we had a female come through. So if you look at the yellow weavers, most of the females have similar colorations, while the males stand out a little bit more. So it's a bit more difficult to actually identify if you look at just the female. So you almost need to get the male and the female together, which we fortunately did. And then we saw the male come through, and what you can see on the male is that it does have a bit of a mask. So now the question becomes, of the masked weavers, which one is it? So village weaver, lesser marked weaver, and southern masked weaver. It's very hard to tell them apart. The lesser masked weaver, eye color is immediately different. It's got a whitish eye, and the bird we're seeing doesn't have that whitish eye, so it eliminates itself. So then we left with the southernmost or the village weaver. We just check if there's any other weavers that have that mask, and no. So then let's look at the distribution of the southernmost and the village weaver to see if we can't see the difference. But again, both of them do occur here in Johannesburg. So then it then becomes a question of looking closer at the bird itself. So I think one of the biggest things to differentiate the two weavers between the village and the southernmost is what they call the fronts. So it's forehead basically, and you can see on the village weaver the forehead is yellow, whereas on the southernmost it's black. So the bird we have is the southernmost, and this is the male, so here's the symbol for the male. And then you can look at the female and you can see the female belongs with the male almost. But if you looked at the two females between the village weaver and the southernmost weaver, you can see it's very hard to tell them apart. So you almost have to get them with the male so that you can tell them apart and identify them. Then we had an interesting brown bird come through. So if you look at this bird, it's just a brown bird and you don't know where to start. So perhaps the thing to do is to try and find it in the index and find something similar to what it looks like. So I think from what you can see here, it may be a bit difficult to tell which family this bird belongs to. But if you look at the shape, it's maybe similar in shape to these birds, possibly even down here. So maybe let's start with page 350 and then go from there. So we had a very brown bird. These are the green bulls. Looks similar, but maybe it's not as yellow. And then we get to the thrushes and we can see that, hey, maybe this is where this bird that we saw fits in. So you can see the shape overall is quite similar to the bird we have. So you can see the brown birds are possibly this Cuckoo thrush, looks very similar, but could also be this olive thrush and this Karichane thrush. I don't know how you pronounce this exactly. Could be Karichane or Karichane, I'm not sure. But looking closer at the distribution, so we'll look at the distribution and see if the distributions differ. So the olive thrush is not found in Johannesburg. The distribution is east of Johannesburg, is the closest that you'll get it to. Cuckoo thrush is found, a lot through the western parts of the country, but not along the coastline. So, that's a possibility because it does occur in and around Johannesburg. And then the Karichane or Karikane thrush, I think Karikane is the way I'll say it, also occurs here in Johannesburg. So it is a possibility, but if you look at it, it's got a white throat with some black stripes on it. It's got orange on its flanks, and if we look at the Cuckoo thrush, it's actually the bird we were looking at. And I think one distinctive feature to look out for is the yellow eye ring. So if you look at the curry cane thrush, it doesn't have that eye ring. The olive thrush also doesn't have that eye ring. So the Karoo thrush is the only one with that eye ring, and is the bird we were seeing. Then I think one of the common residents through South Africa, and there's even a bus service named after them, is the Indian myna that we did see. Very aggressive birds. So to find them in the book, we actually have to look at this bird. So this is a starling, and we go to 426. So we get here and you're like, oh, these look nothing like the myna, but you can see it says starlings and mynas, and they are grouped together as a family. And here's your common myna. The distribution, you can see, fits. It's unfortunately found throughout most of South Africa into Zimbabwe and Botswana. Here's the common myna, the look of it. And if you look at the description, you can see the common myna was introduced from Asia, and that's why it was known as the Indian myna for a long time, and the bus service in Durban is known as the myna bus service. In Cape Town, another introduced species is the common starling. This is introduced from Europe. I think both these birds, the common starling and the common myna, were considered songbirds and were kept as pets for their beautiful song, and then got introduced into the wild, and then were able to breed in the wild. I think the last bird that we did see is on the index, number 348. Again, you can tell from the images, you can tell from the body shape and this yellow rump that it is the right family. So this is the Bulbul family. There are 3 species in South Africa. A Cape Bulbul with a white eye, African red-eye Bulbul, and the dark-cap Bulbul. The Cape Bulbul obviously eliminates itself almost immediately because of the distribution being the Western Cape and not occurring near Joburg. Then you could have the African red-eye Bulbul and the dark-cap Bulbul, which are distributed in and around Joburg. The African red-eye is more an arid species, so its distribution is more arid, and the dark-cap Bulbul is more wet savanna species. And you can see its distribution is according to that. The major difference being then the eye color, and the bird we seeing on our telephone line doesn't have that red eye, so it's very easy to then tell the dark-cap Bulbul is the one that we're looking at and not the red eye. So I think one of the notable mentions of a bird that we get in the garden but did not see is the Cape robin-chat. As you can see, it's widely distributed, so distributed throughout South Africa. And you'll see him in the garden with his tail up in particular. So he has a habit of putting that orange tail up. So if you do see him, they're very territorial, and we do have one in our backyard and one in our front yard. It's just I did not get any footage of them. Then I think besides visually identifying birds, you can also identify birds by bird sound. I'm actually sitting now and it's just starting to rain, but you can almost hear quite a few birds around. I think with the road mic, it may not be as clear. But identifying birds by their calls is also a valid way to actually identify birds, and you can put them on your list just by the call. So I think let's jump into a few of the calls that maybe you'll hear in your garden and maybe is a bit more interesting as well, and you could then identify the birds just by the calls that they make. Okay, so of the birds that we heard, the harida was the one of them. So the harida is actually part of the ibises. So this is the ibis family. So the harida is part of the ibis family, and you can see from the shape of their bodies that they are indeed all one family. And here's your harida ibis, which is a very pretty bird, just also a very noisy bird, and is responsible for a lot of the wake-up calls in the morning here in Johannesburg, and I think all through South Africa. So it is distributed, throughout the wetter parts of South Africa, not in the arid parts of South Africa. They like to dig around in the dirt and pull worms out. So if you observe them for a little while, you'll probably see them catch a worm. And one of the closer cousins is the glossy ibis. It's a prettier version of the harira, basically. I think on the heard but not seen, one of the notable mentions is the red-chested cuckoo. So we'll go to the cuckoo family, which is designated by the Diedrich's cuckoo, 258. So we do get a lot of cuckoos in South Africa, but you'll see on these distributions, you'll see a lot of red. And what that actually means is that these birds migrate in during the summertime. So they are summer migrants to South Africa, and any of the bird distributions that show this red marking is indicative of a migrant, a summer migrant. You get winter migrants to South Africa, and they're shown by a blue distribution map. One of the birds that is a winter migrant is the fairy flycatcher, which comes down from the highlands in Lesotho down into South Africa. So it also makes for a good sighting when you get it in South Africa. What we heard is the red-chested cuckoo. So this one, very hardly seen, and you'll see his distribution is all through the savanna and into the Cape coastline as well, red-chested cuckoo. It is a pretty bird, and he has quite a distinctive call. So his Afrikaans name, the pitmevrou, and I'm just going to use my phone to play a recording of his call. So red-chested cuckoos breed in South Africa, so they will call. Some other cuckoos like the Classes cuckoo and Diedrich's cuckoo, the Diedrich migrates and also breeds in South Africa. So they will call in their mating season, which is the summertime. So classes cuckoo are classified as residents, so some don't migrate, but then some are inter-African migrants as well. So they will also call. Some of the other cuckoos, such as the common cuckoo, they do not breed in South Africa. Why this is important is because if you look at, for instance, the common cuckoo and the African cuckoo, they look very similar, and one of the ways to tell them apart is if they call or not. So the common cuckoo comes from Europe and does not breed in South Africa, so it's silent actually in South Africa, whereas the African cuckoo does breed in South Africa. So if you see, a bird that looks like this, and it is calling, it's more likely to be the African cuckoo. But to tell these two cuckoos apart in the wild, in the bush, is very, very difficult unless they call. Then I think while we're on calls, if you are in the Johannesburg area, well, actually most of eastern South Africa, you will hear the green woodhoopoe's call as well. They are very pretty birds with long red beaks and iridescent feathers. So you'll hear them move together. They move together as a family unit, and they have a cackle that sounds like laughter. So also very easily distinguished when they are calling. So it's a group, a family group will move together and they'll make a noise like this as they're moving through the trees. Some of the most sustained calls are from the crested barbet and the black-collared barbet. The crested barbet is said to be able to call for as long as 4 minutes at a time, because the way it makes its call is different from the way it breeds almost, so it can sustain that call and still keep breeding for, I think it's 4 minutes at a time. If you listen to the call, you can hear how it just continues going, and I'm sure you've heard this call, just walking around in your neighborhood, because they're quite common here in Johannesburg. The black-collared barbet has a almost more melodic call. It's also a very pretty call. And it can also sustain its call for quite a long time. And it's one of the common calls of the African bush almost. I think then what I'd like to mention is that my birding journey didn't actually start in the backyard. I've been putting out seed maybe since I moved in, so 2011, 2012 already. On a regular basis, every month we do go through and buy seed for the backyard, and my mom then took over the duties of doing that in the morning, because she's normally up earlier than I am. When my dad was still around, he used to do it as well. He used to say if he claps his hands 3 times, the birds then know he's ready to feed them. But I think they just line up on the telephone wires anyway, regardless of whether you're clapping or not. But to get back to the point, my birding journey started when I went to the Anne van Dyck Cheetah Center, where I had my Canon 550D and a 70-300 wildlife lens on, and I decided to actually take it through because I wanted to get some pictures of the cheetahs and the wild dogs that they have there. And just as we entered the center, there was a African paradise flycatcher that was nesting above the entrance, just on one of the trees there. So I got a shot of it on the nest, and it's a very pretty bird, but I didn't know how to identify it. And then I got my bird book, the 4th edition of the Sasol Bird Guide, and I looked it up, and I was like, wow, this is a very pretty bird. And it almost got me hooked into birding. And I mean, since then, the story tells itself. I'm now on 489 birds, I think. I must double check that, 488 or 489. And in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going up to the Kruger just to do birding, and then I'll be out with a bird guide in Toyandu as well, just to get more birding done and hopefully get to 500. Anyway, I hope this was an insightful video and helps to see why not every sparrow you see is a sparrow, or not every dove you see is just a dove. The world of birding is actually quite complex and intricate, and can keep you busy for days on end. But this is just a little bit of a beginner video, and hopefully it gets you started on some birding as well. I want to do a follow-up video, do some birding in Marievale, and hopefully take you along for that as well. So stay tuned, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next one.